I would like to start on a very short series going over the basics of Dominion strategy. We're going to build up from what you can learn just from what the rules tell you, not really going into the rules in depth. If you want to learn the rules, look for a rule book or look for another resource. But what we can learn strategically from that and build a little bit. But we're going to try to keep it very simple. We're going to try to keep it, we don't need other players for, just about how decks function in the very, very basic sense. So today we're going to start with, the rules tell you start with a deck of 10 cards. You have 7 coppers and 3 estates. Again, there's some exceptions to this, so just be aware of that. But usually you start with 7 coppers and 3 estates. A copper is a card that makes you a money. An estate doesn't do anything for you, but is worth a point. The rules tell you basically you get 5 cards a turn. You get to play 1 action card. You get to play any number of treasure cards. Those things make you money. And then you get 1 buy with that money to buy a card. Now, province, duchy, estate, curse, copper, silver, and gold are available every game. Silver makes 2 money, gold makes 3 money, duchies are 3 points, and provinces are 6 points. Provinces cost 8, duchies cost 5, estates cost 2, coppers are free, money wise, but they still take a buy. Silvers cost 3, golds cost 6. So basically, the most naive strategy is to just play all your cards every turn. You get your 5 cards, you play them all every turn, you buy a card to help your deck. You buy the best card you can to help your deck. In the early game, that's going to be silver. So in your starting deck, you have 7 coppers, 3 estates. A little under half the time, you're going to have 3 money on a turn. A little under half the time, you're going to have 4. 1/12 of the time, you'll have 2, and 1/12 of the time, you'll have 5. So you could see there's some pretty decent variation there, but you're getting 3s and 4s mostly. So we just start adding silvers. And so the game ends when either 3 piles, any 3 of the supply piles are empty, or the provinces are empty. To a very, very rough approximation, what you want to do is get more provinces than your opponent and you win the game. So you want to be able to get to 4 to 5 provinces as fast as possible. So you buy silvers, and then when you can afford golds, you buy golds. And the super naive strategy is really not very good. And then when you buy province, you can buy province. So it takes a long time to get there. It's very dependent on how well you draw. You see 17 turns, you had 4 provinces there. And it takes quite a while to be able to get 8. Usually in a game you don't need to be able to get 8. And so this is pretty boring. 29 turns is forever. It's a very, very long for a game of Dominion. Let's scroll back to the beginning though and note some things that happen along the way. So, as you're doing this, you might notice that, okay, if I add silvers to my deck, so I add 2 silvers on the first shuffle. Now, instead of hitting 3 or 4 usually, I'm hitting 4 to 5 usually, right? In this deck, I have 12 cards now. There's 2 silvers and all the same starting cards. 2 silvers is 4 money plus the 7 coppers gets me to 11 money in 12 cards. That means my average card makes a little bit less than 1. So my average 5-card hand makes a little bit less than 5, right? So adding 2 silvers gets me to hitting 5 or just below a lot of the time. If I add a 3rd silver, then what that gets me to is now I have 13 cards which make 13 money. I'm hitting 5, quote unquote, on average, obviously with still quite a lot of variation. So some of the turns I am going to miss 5, some of the turns I'm going to hit 6. If we're just playing with the starting cards, hitting 6 is important because it gets you to gold. In most games of Dominion, hitting 5 is important because a lot of the strongest cards in the game, in terms of helping your deck, are hitting 5. But you'll notice, so I've now added some more silvers. So now it took me a couple turns 3 turns to hit 5 on average. It takes 4 more turns of silvers to hit 6 on average, right? So going from 3.5 to 5 takes a turn less than going from 5 to 6. To get to 20, this is where I'm going to have this delve come in, which lets me get silvers, which help me get silvers more easily. But to get to averaging province, it takes over 20 silvers. So you can see that there's a diminishing return as we add more and more silvers to our deck. And let's talk about that for a bit. So now I have 25 cards, right? I've added all of the cards I've added are silvers. I've added 15 silvers to my deck, so I have 37 money in 25 cards. Now, to get to province, right, if I want to average province a turn, 25 cards is 5 turns, right? 5 times 5 is 25. If I want to average a province, how much money do I need in a 25 card deck? Well, I need 8 times 5, which is 40. I have 15 times 2 is 30, plus my 7 coppers. That's 37. So I'm still not there. I'm a few silvers short still. So it takes a lot of silvers. And basically what's going on here is every time you're adding a silver to your deck, you are increasing your money. But effectively what you're doing is you're moving the average money a card produces closer to what a silver produces. Silver only produces 2. The big reason why there's diminishing returns, well, there's 2 reasons. One, first of all, your average was closer to 2 to start with, so there's less of a difference between what your deck was already doing and the silver, right? As your deck gets closer to being all silvers, that doesn't do much. So, but the other reason is every card you add makes every card in your deck, as well as the card that you've added to your deck, harder to see, right? At the beginning of the game, I'm seeing every card, half the turns basically, right? By this point in the game, I'm seeing all of my cards once every 5 turns. So adding another card to it just does less and less and less because I see it less often, right? And so that's the big story here. Adding golds is better than silvers because the difference, and it's not just like, oh, 3 is a little bit better than 2. The difference between 3 and what my deck is making is a lot bigger than the difference between 2 and what my deck is making. So this is the very basics of this style of Dominion. Having more money early lets you get better cards early, which snowballs you to getting better cards faster later, right? Because I can get gold in a normal game, it doesn't take me 30 turns to get to 4 provinces. It only takes me 17. Because hitting gold earlier makes me more likely to hit gold again later, which lets me get my deck better faster, right? So that's the important takeaway. And the other important takeaway is the more cards you add to your deck, the less adding one individual card does, both because your average deck card is less far away from that, but also more importantly because you see each card less often. That'll do it for part 1 here. We'll be back soon with part 2 of this series, where we'll get into some of the other things you can do besides just buying these treasures blindly.